All right. Hey, Casey, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I have asked you if you would mind to join me today because I wanted to talk about how can libertarians get on TV and get in newspapers. And that is something that you and Young Voices are absolutely killing it. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, can you tell me how did Young Voices get started? And when did it get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here with you today. Thanks for the invitation, Jess. In terms of Young Voices history, we were started originally in 2013 as a project as Students for Liberty. Of course, a libertarian student group that's near and dear to my heart. I got my start in the Liberty movement as a student activist at UC Berkeley, starting an SFL chapter there. And then after college, they invited me to come on staff here in DC. So I did that. And the student took over a project that was originally SFL's project called Young Voices. And its original vision was to empower Students for Liberty leaders to get into the media. But I kind of saw a greater opportunity, kind of a broader mission to get more libertarians in general into the media. So they invited me to spin it off in 2016 to its own 501c3 nonprofit. And we've just kind of hit the ground running ever since, expanding, serving more libertarians 18 to 35, getting them on TV, radio, with op-eds, podcasts, online video, everything under the sun, as well as connecting them with professional mentorship and other professional development opportunities. Yeah.
Somebody that I know that went through the Young Voices program is Brad Palumbo. He's been getting media hits on Fox, and his articles have been all over the news. Who are some people that have participated in Young Voices that you are especially proud of how they've been able to use the tools that they learned to then turn around and become commentators on Fox News and other channels?
Yeah, Brad's probably our most famous in terms of social media awareness, but we have a number of others. Daniel DiMartino is one of our great writers who is a Venezuelan expat. His family fled the country when he was 16. And ever since joining our program, he really kind of told his story about growing up in the socialist society that we've been able to get him on Fox News. And in 2019, he had, in fact, the most read article about Venezuela that we helped publish for that year in USA Today. And now he's studying economics at Columbia. We've had other folks like Hannah Cox participate in our podcast accelerator program. We kind of helped her launch and grow her program, which now gets over 1,000 downloads an episode on the minimum. So that's pretty awesome. And, through the years, we've just seen lots of successes. In fact, I oftentimes forget about them and then I'll bump into them on the street. Like during the Trump administration, we had two of our writers, Jared Meyer and Amelia Irvine, get jobs at the the Council of Economic Advisors in the White House, which is pretty awesome. We've had lots of people get jobs at think tanks like Cato, Niskanen Center, et cetera. Some folks go into academia. One of our writers, our current writers, Alexander Salter, it's kind of insane. He's like in the Wall Street Journal almost every month now, and has really kind of sung our praises for helping him write. So we've just all over the field in terms of different folks in policy journalism and academia. I'm so proud of some of the alumni that we've had.
On my New Year's resolution list for the last 2 years has been to take a writer's program, and I have neglected to follow through with that resolution at this point. So I'd like to know, what is the application process like, and who are people that are ideal applicants for Young Voices?
Yeah, so we have an application process that's open year round. We accept people into classes of 6-month classes in July and January every year, beginning then. In terms of our application, it's pretty straightforward. Besides basic information, we ask for kind of some ideological screening information just to make sure that we're dealing with libertarians, asking about favorite thinkers, et cetera, issue areas. And then basically the crux of the application is we ask for a writing sample, as well as just 1 to 2 minute video introducing yourself to get a better sense of someone's verbal communication skills. So that's kind of the main thing, but we're really kind of agnostic about, we probably a lot of the most common question people ask is, do you have to have like tons of experience? But with Young Voices, we're really open to, accepting anyone who's never had a published work in his or her life, all the way up to people who are very experienced at that. So I like to think that we like to engage with people at all different levels of experience.
So I know that a lot of my friends are kind of beyond the 35 age range that Young Voices has on its website for ideal applicants. Can you tell us a little bit more about if somebody is 35 or older, if they would still be able to qualify for Young Voices, or where you would recommend that they learn more about how to become a writer, a journalist, or a news commentator?
Yeah, so for right now, we don't accept people over the age of 35. We're kind of focusing on 18 to 35. However, we do have one program called our accelerator program that we accept people of all ages, and that's for folks looking to kind of start or grow a podcast or online video kind of streaming show. So that is open to anyone. And in fact, we've really enjoyed in the past working with think tanks like the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, the Cardinal Institute in West Virginia. And we're really kind of growing more as kind of a professional, the PR service for different think tanks and individuals, regardless of their age. And I hope that in the future, Young Voices will kind of engage with more of those types of programs that don't have an age limit. But in terms of, to answer your question about what resources to look to, there's lots of resources online for improving writing. We have on our YouTube page for Young Voices kind of our cornerstone training that I do called The Art of the Op-Ed, and that's posted online. Anyone can see. There's lots of great resources like the America's Future Foundation. They have a writing fellowship that I believe might be open to all ages as well. So that's a great resource. There's other groups, not necessarily in the liberty world, like the Op-Ed Project. I know of one that specifically focuses on writing, just lots of good free advice out there.
Okay, so now that I'm over my intimidation about applying, so it seems pretty simple. Application, share a little bit about who are some of the thinkers that I follow, and a quick video about me. I think I can do that. If I were accepted into the program, what does this program look like? How do I, in the period of time that I'm with the program, become somebody that can be in the footsteps of someone like Brad Palumbo?
Yeah, so the way Young Voices works, we really kind of have a unique regimen of training and practice. We require all of our writers to go through one kind of webinar training a month that we do, touching upon everything. Our trainings are like the Art of the Op-Ed I mentioned, about op-ed writing, radio, TV, how to like make a good impression on those opportunities, growing your brand professionally, kind of honing your expertise in a certain area. So we do trainings for that. But really the cornerstone of the program, I think where people learn the most, is the requirement. We require every writer in our program to submit one op-ed draft a month that our team of editors edit and pitch to publications for media exposure. And that's something that I think we really see people who are, when you think of like the Brad Palumbos of the world, that's really where I think the future leaders shine, is if they really are engaged in the op-ed editing process. That's a great opportunity to learn, improve your writing, and get exposure. So usually our most successful alumni are the folks that we find take that part of the program seriously, and writing, editing, pitching. And then from there, I emphasize the op-eds because from there, that's kind of the wellspring that all other opportunities flow from. So if you get a really good op-ed published, then you can get TV and radio opportunities, because we have a team that pitches out, pitches our writers out to producers and bookers at TV, radio, outlets to get interviews. And so they like to see that someone can competently comment on a subject, which is done very well through an op-ed. So that's a really good point that's a really good way to build your brand and get onto radio, TV, terrestrial radio as well. And then, from there, other professional opportunities flow, like mentorships, et cetera. So it's really kind of emphasizing the writing track aspect, element of our program that people like the Brad Palombos and the future leaders really shine.
So I think I've been doing myself a disservice by having not applied yet, because it sounds like the resources that Young Voices provides are ones that people can go out and learn how to become writers. They can do all these things on their own, but you guys are really helping with the accountability factor, making sure that they're being held accountable to writing something. I think that for me is the hardest thing, is just sitting down and putting some thoughts on in a Microsoft Word document. So you've got that one that really helps the participants, but also the connections with the outlets. Those are things that you can't really just learn how to have that overnight. That's something that takes a long time. So it really sounds like Young Voices is a really great opportunity for people that want to learn, be held accountable, and also leverage the connections that you guys already have. So I will be applying. Please expect that soon. But I wanted to speak with you today because I know that this program can be so valuable and can really change careers for people. And I wanted to just open up this conversation with people who may not be aware of Young Voices. So I've invited some of my friends to join this Zoom meeting. If anyone has questions for Casey that they don't want to be recorded on this Zoom recording, please go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll ask Casey. Otherwise, let's go ahead and have some Q&A for a little while. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute. And I see James Ray is the first one. So James, why don't you go ahead and ask Casey your question?
Hi, Casey. It's nice to see you.
Hey.
I'm not a young libertarian, and I've been going through this for quite a while. And so I've got a few issues on my plate that seem to have been ignored by both libertarians and the media. So I'm going to mention them briefly and then shut up. The first one is energy from thorium, which is one of these things that just sounds too good to be true. And I've been griping about that since 2008, when the Obama administration ignored me, and then the President Faceball ignored me, and now President Kid Sniffer is ignoring me on that. But it's an important thing. If anyone wants to have me on their podcast, you can prepare in 5 minutes with this video I've got at the Libertarian Party Energy from Thorium Caucus homepage on Facebook, which is one of the reasons that I try to be relatively tame on Facebook. Thing number two, the debates scam. I have been fighting to get libertarians into the debates thing for literally decades. And this time the news media was just too NPC annoying. And it came to the point that my meme, and it's not even my meme, a meme I barely lifted a finger on, did plainly better journalism than the entire corporate MSM combined. And that's pretty goddamn pathetic. And so I have been offering media availabilities, and so far haven't gotten big names like Mr. Palumbo, but I've gotten smaller names that I respect just as much, like Princess Rivulet. And so I offer this. The third thing is an unpunished $900,000 payoff on a slap and tickle case in Florida that happened at the dawn of the Me Too era, and somehow everybody but this lunatic has been ignoring it, and I don't ignore it, so I've been being annoying about it. But that's my rant.
Well, that's great. Thank you for your service on all those issue areas. I would say I know it's super frustrating for certain issues that we care about and that the media just ignores, but I would say just keep on trucking. I think that websites especially are a great way to highlight the issues that you care about. I also, want to emphasize like letters to the editors are really great. If there's a tie-in you see to an issue you care about and something that's published, that's a way to get really, into big outlets with the right approach. And, social media, I mean, it's really encouraging that we have such decentralized information, and like the memes can really influence the conversation. So keep at it.
Thanks, James. Rebecca has her hand up, so let's have her ask the next question.
Hi, Casey. Hey, we've never met, but many years ago, Ron Paul spoke at UC Berkeley, and I saw you introduce him. So
yes, that was one of the wildest days of my my life. Actually, there was a last-minute venue change because there were so many people, so we had to have it outside, and all the bureaucrats were giving me so much crap for bringing this big mob of Ron Paul supporters, but we had the rally anyway. It was glorious.
Right, yeah, on to my question. So I looked at the Young Voices website, and I noticed that your contributors all have specialties.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how do you pick a specialty? Because for me, I have a pretty general background. I mean, I work in the liberty movement, but I'm an administrative assistant, and I have a degree in English literature. I never really studied like economics or whatever, right? I don't really have the type of background that would be considered authoritative. How do you get published, or how do you get noticed when you don't have much of a background?
Yeah, well, the good news is that at least at Young Voices, we found that a lot of the media is pretty meritocratic. So if you just do your research and start writing really smart commentaries on any given issue of interest to you, usually you can find a publication that will put it up somewhere. Maybe not the New York Times, maybe not the Wall Street Journal, but even local papers, obviously blogs, but even respected state papers and whatnot. All of our writers at Young Voices are usually, they just have a bachelor's degree, or some of them are still college students pursuing things. But if they can write persuasively and do their research, and we found that you usually can get published. That's the thing also about the media landscape today, is that there is just so much opportunities for people to find their voice somewhere. So the good news is that I think that if you just kind of pick topics that you're interested in and write, usually you'll find some place to get your message heard. Yep.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's have Kevin. He has his next question. We worked on the Jorgensen campaign together last year, so I'm very interested in what he would like to ask.
Thank you, Jess, and hello, Casey. First of all, thank you for sharing all this great information with us about how to get on TV and how to get into the media. And it's something that I have been struggling with as a libertarian here in the San Francisco Bay Area for some time. Much of the media is very left-leaning and not very favorable towards some of the positions we like to present, especially on fiscal matters, but also most recently on COVID-19 and the lockdowns out here. I noticed that you said that the organization only accepts people up to the age of 35. I was wondering if there are any resources to help review op-eds for older people like me. I'm a little bit above that age range, and I've got a background where I've done a lot in the business world. I've written in a professional manner, but not really for the purposes of going out to the media. I've tried writing a couple of op-eds and I've actually run it by my friends, but I'd really benefit from that kind of feedback if it's possible or available to someone like me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. There are, I mentioned the op-ed project. There is another nonprofit that I think offers those kinds of services, but usually I think they make you pay something. So I don't know, for free, I can't really think of one off the top of my head beyond Young Voices. But yeah, I unfortunately, I don't think I can really give a satisfying answer. There's lots of great resources out there about how to write a persuasive op-ed, but in terms of like pro bono editing and stuff like that, I think that's really something that you just got to ask your colleagues, as you already are doing.
Great. Well, thank you, Casey. I appreciate that. If you can share, you mentioned one resource when you were talking that's on the Young Voices site. If there are any other ones you can share that you think are valuable, I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll while you're getting the next question, I'll look that up and drop it in the chat box.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Great to see you again. I'm going to bring up Ned next. Ned is across the pond, last I knew, and he has a question.
Yes, so greetings from sunny England. So I know the landscape here much better. I'm just curious, when you're approaching a media for a story or to place an op-ed, is it best not to reveal your party affiliation, or do you work libertarian and just sort of go with what your content is and hope that sort of judge more on face value rather than the prejudice that a label comes with?
Yes, that is a great question, and that is something that we incorporate in that one of the main points we emphasize at Young Voices is very much, if you can avoid party affiliation or even self-identifying as a lowercase L libertarian, and just let the facts speak for themselves when it comes to persuasion. We usually find that you'll build more bridges, your work will be more attractive to certain outlets. So definitely, I would say when you can, avoid kind of pigeonholing yourself for that. There are some exceptions, certainly for more TV, radio. Sometimes, they'll kind of want more explicit their guests to fall into one side or the other. And that's an opportunity that libertarians can kind of market ourselves as saying like, oh, we're something slightly different. But for the most part, for print, I would say, just let the facts and your arguments speak for themselves.
Thanks, Ned. Good to see you. All right, I'm going to bring up Lisa. Hey, Lisa.
Thanks, Jess. I have two questions, and I'll try to keep it succinct. And I'm sorry, my voice is going. One of them is around building relationships with media. I was going to ask about, over this last session, I work with a grassroots organization and I'm working with the Libertarian Party, and they line up a lot in value. One of the things that worked this session was just being in the same space with a very libertarian-minded reporter that does all the politics stuff around South Dakota. Building some of that relationship, he was kind of giving me some thoughts around getting into print. And he said, it would help me if you told me about other things that were, that's funny, he's right now. He said it would be helpful if you told me about some other things going on in the state that you're not necessarily involved in, but kind of be a resource for me on other things too. And then one thing that happened recently is haven't been asked a whole lot about what our opinion is on things, but he was talking about something he knows we're involved in. And he actually reached out and asked for a quote, asked for some information, and published it in his piece. So I was going to ask around that, were you found to be successful in building relationships with media if you found it to be successful? The second would just be, we've got a local issue going on where a gentleman was starting a pedicab business downtown. and got everything cleared, passed, bought the pedicabs. Then it was published that he was starting this business, and then of course somebody from the city came, and there was a licensing board that said, well, you can't, there's a piece that was an issue. You can't have multiple drivers to one pedicab. I'm looking to see where we can capitalize, first of all, be a resource for him, but also where we can maybe spotlight some things so that it brings some attention to the party as well.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch some of that part. I got the last part about kind of the pedicab, but what was the specific question again?
I'm just looking to see where we could be, like where we could position ourselves best in a situation like that.
Yeah.
To not only help him, but also kind of bring some positive media to the party.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a great opportunity. And particularly in a state like South Dakota, I think that kind of the smaller states that are not like California. I'm sorry, I say it's a Californian, but it is true that it's so overwhelmingly liberal. It can sometimes be hard to make a dent in that media atmosphere. But in a state like South Dakota, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to bring attention to a case like that. I mean, I can rattle off a bunch of ideas. One idea could be that he could write an op-ed about his story, or someone could write an op-ed about that. You can organize some sort of like direct action campaign, like a protest or something like that. Send out a press release to the media to draw attention to that. There's, of course, radio. Maybe, it might be for certain outlets, maybe they won't want to cover it, maybe not the local NPR or something like that. But at the very least, I'm sure you got some talk radio, something like that, a lot of these shows, they're always looking for guests, always looking for things like that. And especially such a clear, sympathetic story of, government versus a small entrepreneur. I mean, that's just such a great case. Local news as well. I think it's really just about finding, doing a little research, sending a story out to the right person. And that's something where you can kind of, be more engaged as a party of like writing a short press release as, the LP or whatnot, and sending that around. So I think that a story like that is really incredibly ripe for bringing a lot of attention and winning a lot of sympathy.
That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The talk radio piece, we hadn't engaged in a whole lot, but we do have a podcast around here that's libertarian minded that we could probably pop into.
Cool.
All right. So Casey, we asked you for a half hour, and we're now at a half hour. I just pulled up the accelerator program that you mentioned that has no age limitation to it, and I put it in the chat. And I also see there is a deadline of May 31st for the application. So would you mind plugging any application deadlines and any last words before we wrap?
Yeah, so May 31st is also the deadline for our contributor program, the next class of our contributor program, which is our main program for 18 to 35-year-olds. So if any of you know folks you think might be good and within the age range, that would also be great. Obviously, we already talked about the kind of application process and whatnot. Accelerator program, like you mentioned, that's all ages, and hopefully we'll be launching more programs like that. Those are really kind of the two main things right now. Young Voices, there's lots of other ways to engage with us. We are always looking for speaking opportunities. So if any of you host groups, LP groups, other civic groups, political groups that are ever looking for a speaker, we can connect you to people like the Brad Palombos or whatnot that could give a talk. Hopefully in the future, post-COVID, we'll be doing more in-person events across the country as well. And yeah, I think that's probably about it. I know I said I couldn't, when I was answering the questions, I couldn't quite dig up that lecture But I will do that right after we hang up, and I'll email you, Jess. So
Okay.
if you want to distribute that as kind of
Yes.
a follow-up, I have one, The Art of the Op-Ed. I couldn't find it on YouTube, but I know we at least have it recorded on Zoom, so I can send that via Zoom.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I learned a lot of good things. I learned that the application process is pretty easy. There's a lot of resources that are available from Young Voices, including speakers. If LP groups want to have a speaker come out, Young Voices can provide that. So, and then there's also the accelerator program for anyone who's interested in starting a podcast. That sounds like a great opportunity that I didn't know about a half hour ago. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone that joined. And I'm going to share this recording with the LP community. So that way, hopefully the next pledge class will have a lot more members of the LP community in the Young Voices program. So thank you so much today, Casey. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.